You are not free. You do not have the freedoms you think you have. You are not in control of your actions, so you are not responsible for said actions either. And in recognizing your lack of responsibility, you may have just had the most responsible and most revolutionary realization of your life. Here to explain, Raoul Martinez is author of Creating Freedom, The Lottery of Birth, The Illusion of Consent, and The Fight for Our Future. Welcome to This Is Hell, Raoul.
Hi, Chuck. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You write that the language of freedom pervades our lives, framing the most urgent issues of our time and the deepest questions about who we are and who we wish to be. Freedom is a stirring ideal central to the concept of human dignity and visions of a fulfilling and meaningful life. Its universal appeal, its ability to unite and inspire, have long made it a powerful political weapon. In the scramble to define it, the ideal of freedom has been pushed, pulled, twisted, and torn, expertly molded to suit the interests of those with the power to shape it. Do you believe that all the way across the political spectrum, from the farthest right to the farthest left, that the common goal we all have is having a fulfilling, meaningful, dignified life, and that that across the spectrum, the shared belief is the way to that life is freedom, however we define it?
I think there's a sense in which that's true. I think freedom does seem to span the spectrum, but people think about it in very different ways. I think there's been actually quite a powerful and ongoing ideological battle to frame the issue and define it, because the way we think about these fundamental concepts like freedom and the elements which make up that concept, so from democracy is a form of freedom, the way we add meaning and the way we interpret these fundamental ideas really shapes the way we live our lives and the beliefs we have about politics and what's right and what's wrong and what kind of government we want. So, yes, I would say there's a sense in which, at least terminologically, people are committed to it, but there's huge disagreement when it comes to the substance beneath it.
Is that what defines us as different nations, as different cultures, as different societies, the way in which we see freedom?
I think it's one of the things that defines us. I think there's a clear sense in which there's a kind of class-based element to how we interpret the idea. So I think it's a very convenient idea for the establishment, for the status quo, for those with wealth and power, to promote an idea of freedom which is very individualized, to say you are responsible for your situation. If you're in a bad situation, that's because you haven't worked hard enough. And if you're very rich, if you're a billionaire, then clearly you're an incredible human being with lots of talent and who's made great choices, and you deserve all the privileges that you enjoy. By taking the cordon of responsibility and tying it really closely around the individual, what I think we do is we exculpate the wider society. So instead of blaming the institutions and the culture and all the forces which go into shaping a human being, their identity, their beliefs, their understanding, their capacity for critical thinking, this notion encourages us to focus just on the individual and say, we're going to blame you or praise you, and that's where kind of the buck stops. And I think that has a real ideological, political component. It favors certain interests in society to define freedom that way, and it really undermines other interests. So as we move across the spectrum towards the left wing, you get a greater sense of the importance of institutional factors, that a human being is really the product of many of the aspects in society which shape them from, the religion you believe, for instance, is completely dictated as a child by the family that you're going to be born into. And that's true of so many frameworks that we inherit from our culture and our family, our schools, our media, the way we try and interpret and make sense of the world. It depends on where we're born, the time that we're born in a particular place, and the kind of ideas and people we're exposed to. So yeah, as you move across that spectrum, a greater appreciation of those factors comes into play. And I think what I'm arguing for is just to take it all the way across and to understand that luck plays a hugely decisive role in all of our lives. And the capabilities and capacities we have as individuals and our understanding of the world and what that means for the choices we make it can be traced to so many forces which we don't have control over. And the reason I think this is an important idea, an exciting idea, is I think it increases our capacity for empathy and compassion. Instead of simply blaming the individual or praising the individual, we begin to look for institutional, structural reasons for behavior. So if there's too much crime, instead of just saying, well, criminals are terrible people, we look at the causes behind the kind of conditions which produce certain forms of behavior that we don't want in society, and then we can work on changing those conditions. So I think there are a number of positives that can come out of seeing the world in this way, and one of which, of course, is just critical thinking. It encourages all of us to look really closely at the forces that have shaped us and to question them instead of just taking our identity as something given that we've chosen or created, when, of course, our identity is something which actually we inherit, a little bit like our eye color and our hair and our skin color. It's not something that we create or choose ourselves. It's something that is produced. And so questioning the elements of our identity, our beliefs, our values, and our society, I think is a hugely important part to expanding the freedom that is available to us.
So does focusing on the individual, does that lead to things like mass incarceration and still mass incarceration not being able to solve our crime problem? Is that the kind of thing that happens when we embrace individualism as much as we do here in the States?
I think so. I think it's very convenient to have whole sectors of society living in very impoverished conditions, especially with a background, centuries of slavery and then racism, which feed into many of the power dynamics which still exist in our society. To have all of these conditions in play, which limit people's opportunities, which impoverish many of the, make it harder for fundamental needs to be met in early childhood and to be exposed to perhaps role models which are far more likely to lead you in certain directions. To kind of discount all of that, it's very convenient. It allows us just to say, it's a criminal's fault, let's bung them in jail, they deserve to suffer, and good riddance kind of thing. Instead of saying, well, hang on, maybe there's some structural factors here. Maybe we shouldn't be so content in, if we happen to have a fair degree of privilege and we haven't gone out and committed a crime or become a drug dealer or whatever we might be talking about, that may well be because of our privilege and the opportunities we've had and the examples and the fact that we had many more options than many other people. And then, there are genetic factors which come into play which can shape our predispositions for things like becoming an addict and the degree to which we are aggressive. So, yeah, I think if you adopt this framework where you take conditions into account much more, when you look at the criminal justice system and the amount of people, especially in the States, that are thrown in jail, you say, well, this is a corrupt system. It's inefficient. It's not actually seeming to work as a massive deterrent. It's not like people are stopping committing crimes. So perhaps, a different tack is necessary, one which addresses the fundamental conditions.